Well, what I'm going to talk about today is a little more involved than just self-esteem, and I'm certainly no expert in the subject. I'm having a panic attack right now. Can't see it, but I'm having a panic attack. The link with self-esteem with narcissism, and then a possible link to some of the religious activity that's going on south of the border from us. First of all, though, I want to tell you a story. Early life lesson. I come from a family of bowlers. 5-pin bowling, seriously. We did that for as long as I can remember, Sunday night league at Uptown Bowling Lanes. But when I was about 9, I think I already started bowling on my own. By that point, I joined a kids league. So there was an event. I bowled with a bunch of other kids. I did pretty good. I got like, I don't know, 100, whatever. And I'm like, yes, I did really well. And then it came time for the prizes, and they used handicapping. All of a sudden, I had a handicap, and I got bupkis. 0, zilch. I was so upset. My parents were upset. My parents were not the type to even, suck it up, kid. But they actually took me out and bought me a doll because they were so upset that they'd use these handicaps because I'd done the best. I had like the highest score, and here I'm not even getting a prize for anything. Guaranteed, I bring that story up because that was 40 years ago. Do we really think that would happen today? There wouldn't be a competition. Our kids would all get prizes. They wouldn't use handicaps. They would, prize, you just showed up, yay, Because we don't want to, all we've done in the last 30, 40 years is we told people we need to improve your self-esteem. Okay? Now, all this data that I'm going to be talking about today is from this wonderful book that I started reading. It's called The Narcissism Epidemic. It's by a couple of academics, by Jean Twenge and Keith Campbell. So all of their statistics and all their data is from the United States, so beware of that. And their focus is on the United States, but I'm sure that Canada is not immune to any of what I'm talking about. Generally, we know what self-esteem is. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to have a healthy self-esteem. But when we start telling kids especially that you're special, you're number one, you don't have to do anything, you just show up and you've won that prize, that may not be the healthiest thing that we want to do. Traditionally, back when I was a child and before that, after World War II, North American society was much more involved with the social consciousness of togetherness, humility, service, working towards, working together. It was 1961 when JFK, in his inaugural address, I can't say inaugural, uttered those words. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. This is not just rights, people, it's responsibilities as well. So we've somehow shifted it in the last 40 years from that emphasis on the communal we to the individual I. And there was another example just recently. Neil Armstrong, the first person to walk on the moon. He just passed away just a couple of months ago. And his statement when he landed was, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And when he started to explain why he said that and why he thought of that, he told 60 Minutes, I thought, well, when I step off, it's going to be just a little step. But then I thought about all those 400,000 people that had given me the opportunity to make that step. So he certainly wasn't emphasizing, yeah, I did it. It was me, He was thinking about all the other people that contributed towards that journey. And his family, even today, says that in their simple request, what they would like us to remember about him was his example of service, accomplishment, and modesty. So I kind of think that's a bit of a old-fashioned or a point of view that's not quite so prevalent today. We really have emphasized self-esteem in the last 40 years. This is some of the statistics from the book. I just took photocopies, but from the middle of the 1980s, we're looking at the number of self-esteem publications in the white circles, publications in major news outlets on self-esteem in the white versus black squares for narcissism. Our focus has really been on self-esteem. Right now, Barnes & Noble, there's probably over 3,000 titles that mention self-esteem just in the title alone. In the 1950s, only 12% of teens agreed with the statement, I'm important. By the 1980s, it was 80% who agreed with that same statement. And so, of course, this is all emphasis on U.S., but, we do have our examples from Canada as well. Remember this guy from a couple weeks back in the news, the no-zero teacher? He's a physics teacher, high school physics, in Edmonton. He was fired because he awarded zeros for work that wasn't turned in. No kidding. But it was against the school's policy. So they eventually tittered and fought about it, and he ended up getting fired, and he's now been hired by a private school. But this is high school. This is not grade 2. These people in a year or two might be going off to university where they're sure not going to be happy with giving you, yeah, glad you give you a 0 for something that you don't turn in. Or entering the workforce, where if you don't show up for work, they're not going to keep you on. They're just going to say you're fired, out the door, you're gone. Now, one of the interesting things I'm not going to get too much into today is there too much of a good thing of self-esteem? Well, there's now doubt about that finding, even in the first part. There was a study from 2005 by Roy Baumeister, I want to get his name right, Florida State University professor, demonstrated that less than 200 of the more than 15,000 articles published on self-esteem between 70 and 2000 met any sort of standard for academic rigor. So that's one part. That is one part of why are we so focused on improving everyone's self-esteem. The other part is that there's a fine line between self-esteem and narcissism. And we're finally seeing that now. Now, narcissism itself can be something very mild, or it can be the full-blown mental disorder known as narcissistic personality disorder. Okay? So according to Twenge and Campbell, that this is now an epidemic in the United States. That is what they're focusing on. They're looking at the numbers from the narcissistic personality inventory scores among college students, which have increased. Now, my mind and Laura in statistics, I don't know if it's a big enough jump, but the scores were about 15.5 in 1980, but now scores are more like 17.5 from 2005. So we can make judgments about how much the difference is in the actual statistics. But I can kind of see it going through our society. I think you can probably all see some examples as well. But what's narcissism, though? What's indicative of that kind of behavior? Now, generally, narcissists think they're better than others in social status, intelligent, creativity. However, they may be a little unfocused on it. They think they're fundamentally superior in that sense, special and entitled and unique. One thing, though, narcissists have a problem with relationships with people. They tend to view others as somebody to manipulate rather than someone to be on an equal footing with. Traits that are commonly associated: vanity, which, is the self-absorption with self. We're posting pictures of ourselves all the time. We look great. We spend a lot of money on our clothes. We have to go get the $60 mani-pedi every week, whatever it is. Even to plastic surgery, which is booming in the last 10, 20 years. Materialism. We have to support our lifestyle. We can't, and it's probably those highest end people that are saying, well, you don't just have to have that car or that house now. You have to have the biggest car, the biggest house. And other people kind of tend to follow and gravitate towards that end of things as well. And what they're also asserting in the book was that probably contributed to the housing crash in 2008 in the U.S., is the whole emphasis of people buying houses larger than they could afford, lenders who are willing to make those deals, and that's what happened when people couldn't pay. Uniqueness. Everybody wants to be unique and special somehow. Antisocial behavior goes along with narcissism too, because they tend to manipulate people. They don't react very well to criticism. So somebody who's very narcissistic is not going to be, they may be charming at first, and they may be very nice people up on the surface, but then once you get to know them, you wonder why those relationships don't last. You find out why they don't last. Disregard for others' feelings, lack of empathy for others. So they're not being able to put themselves in the position of somebody else. They're always thinking about me. And a sense of entitlement, which really, an inflated sense of self, it's an inaccurate sense of self. And of course, I am such an entertainment junkie that this is my thing. Once we had entertainment that was based on actual actors and actresses and sports people who really did really well, but a few years ago, we started to see the visual media really take over in this area. And first of all, it's television itself. Television, which dictates what kind of people we see. And do we see a lot of obese people on TV? Do we see a lot of really ugly people? Or should I say, just looks challenged or something, whatever. No, they're the exception, certainly. Even your newscasters, even your reality TV people, they're always better looking than what we could possibly imagine ourselves to be. Tabloid magazines. I love People magazine. I really do. I buy it every week, honestly. But the prevalence of these magazines, and now we feel entitled to delve into these celebrities' lives and their personal lives, and they're quite willing to put them out there, which is a very large difference from what it used to be 30 or 40 years ago. You didn't hear about that. And then reality television. It started, with Candid Camera. Back then, probably the only way the average person could end up on television would be on a game show. That would be exciting. Or in the local news, you know, if they, I don't know, they were interviewed about something that went on their block. But then by the 1970s, we had things like the Gong Show. Cops came along during the 1989 writer's strike, apparently, and then TV people, producers, realized, hey, this doesn't cost a lot of money. You don't need to pay big actors, you don't have to have writers, anything like this, and it's just exploded. Now there's all these categories of reality television, and we have people all over the place. I'm sure everybody can probably name all those people. If anybody doesn't recognize anyone, you know, we can talk later. But we've got Kate and John and their 8 children. Jersey Shore, Caesar. And I mean, this is not all negative either, too. These are interests that we all, you know, we would like to be. Holmes, Mike Holmes, Caesar Milan. Octomom, maybe not such a good choice. Kim Kardashian, who really, the whole Kardashians, I don't know what they're famous for. They're just famous for being famous. Yeah, exactly. And do we, where am I here? Remember Jessica Simpson? Do you remember that? Nick Lachey and her and Newlyweds, Nick and Jessica. Is this chicken I'm eating or fish? I know it says tuna, but it's called chicken of the sea. So, you know, yeah. So this is how we all want to be part of there. And of course, this has gone along with the birth of these here devices, the internet. Now we can all participate. We're all out there. Everybody can have a blog. Everybody can tweet on Twitter these days. And notice even the very names of these kind of options. Facebook, YouTube, MySpace, iPhone, iPad, you know, everything. It's all me, I. And even in 2006, Time magazine recognized this by their person of the year. You. Yeah. Ta-da! It's all about you. So no wonder this is kind of where we're going. So I looked at this. I'm reading this interesting, fascinating book. And I started to think, because I'm a humanist and an atheist and agnostic, all combined into one, I sort of thought, and I thought there has to be a link here to religion. And I think there is. This is purely speculative now. But on my part, the United States is kind of an anomaly. Recently, Angus Reid stated in a recently released study result that 51% of Americans think God created human beings in their present form within the last 10,000 years. Almost reverse of the numbers that they'll find in Canada or Great Britain, where people are much more likely to accept evolution. Those Americans are still saying, nope, creationism. You know, this is me. I'm special. Also, the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life. It used to be that Americans, from what they have researched, they'd stay with the religious belief that they were born with for their entire lives. It didn't change. You were born a Catholic, you stayed a Catholic, you went to the same church as your parents did, etc., your kids went to. However, what they found now is that roughly half of American adults have changed their religious affiliation at least once in their lives. And even the terms that they're using, I find this very interesting, that they're calling it the American religious marketplace. Every religious group is constantly gaining and losing adherents, and it just happens the ones that are growing are just gaining them faster than they lose them. The one exception is the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is losing probably 1/3 of the respondents said they were raised Catholic but are no longer of that faith. This means roughly 10% of all Americans are former Catholics. Okay? So they've left Catholicism and they don't believe in anything now, or they went to Protestantism. Now some of those folks actually reported their reasons for leaving included things like they didn't agree with the church on their stance about birth control or abortion, something like that. But by and large, what the largest percentages that they found were people saying their spiritual needs weren't being met. This is why they left. Or they found a religion they liked more. Like shoes. Yeah. Maybe they just gradually drifted away from the religion. There's other reasons that I didn't put in the middle there, but right down to the bottom of you marrying somebody from a different faith. That's an obvious reason why you would leave that community. But by and large, the largest said that they just were not satisfied with what this religion had to say. Thanks Ashley. Mom's wrapping up. And where was I? And I think it has to do with something with the way that the popular religions in the United States now treat people. They're not like the Catholics saying you're guilty, you sinned, you're saying communion once a week, you're going to, confession. No, what religions today are talking to people about is God loves you, Jesus loves you, you're special. God cares about every little thing you do. He's there. You were made for a special purpose, and you know you're made in God's own image. of course. Not evolved from those lowly creatures. You're special. So I can really see that link between that narcissistic personality that wants to think I'm special and I'm unique, and the focus on what religion is selling these days. Especially in the United States, what you'll find is there's a real growth in the larger mega churches, where a lot of this is what the message they're talking about, and they have no problem at all with the prosperity gospel as well, which tells people, yes, you deserve that new car. Yes, we want you to have that big house. God wants you to have the large house. So I think that's something that really needs a bit more focus. So that's my hypothesis, that I'm thinking a link can be made between the strength of the religion and the growing sense of entitlement of the people. So I think maybe the good ship self-esteem kind of went a little off course there. So thank you very much for listening.
Interesting. Do you think that, I guess, religions are causing this thought process in people, or do you think more so they're trying to cash in on
I think it's promoting it.
People to come?
I think they are. I think religions have changed a great deal. That they're realizing that to keep adherence and to keep growing, they need to be serving something that people really want. And that's what people want to hear. They want to hear that message that they're special and that there's a plan for them. And God actually listens to them. So yeah, I think it kind of all kind of dovetailed together.
Off of what people are already saying rather than causing what people are thinking.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a response. Yeah. Yeah, Laura.
So, are we more narcissistic, or do we have more, or has technology facilitated more outlets for narcissism? Human nature, my guess is has been roughly, static or changes very slowly from year to year, from generation to generation. We all have the same base instincts. Technology allows outlets, for things to prosper, things to get suppressed, and we live in an era where anybody can broadcast themselves. Yeah. And because that technology is there, we're taking advantage of it. So, are we really more narcissistic, or are we really just showing our narcissism more?
I'm wondering if it is the effect is muted here in Canada. I don't know why. I think we're a bit more rational and a little more European in our focus. But from what I've been reading and what I've been seeing and what I see on the internet and things like that today is that this is really affecting the young people to the most degree. Is that they've grown up with this in their entire lives. There's a lot more statistics I didn't get into, but there's a lot of parents now who they're more concerned with being friends with their children, to actually being nice, and the desire to say that a parental, I can't remember the term of it, but behaving and having a child behave is less important these days to parents. That's what one statistic that they brought up. So I don't know if it's kids getting everything they need with no consequences. I don't know. That was a bad answer. Sorry. That was terribly misspoken. Yes,
I see that. I mean, our world is changing, and where not that many decades ago, you could be a part of a company forever. You'd be basically nurtured, and you wouldn't have to think so much as an individual that way in a marketplace, that you could relax in this sort of community and feel secure. But now, knowing that there's not really security even in what those jobs that used to be secure before. And so I could see that there's more need for self-esteem now, because it's the people who believe, rightfully or not, that they have something to contribute are the ones that are going to go pursue opportunities, or the ones with lower self-esteem will sit back, and maybe that's part of that, the economic divide.
That real competition.
As well. So I think it's probably a good thing and needed now, but I'm just thinking that too, that not giving someone zero, I don't see that being a long-term actual boosting of self-esteem,
It's not. It's not. The emphasis, and really when I'm looking at websites that we're talking about, how can parents help their children with self-esteem? It has to be more realistic and emphasizing on accomplishments, and also reminding kids that they're not always going to win, that they're not always going to do great, and that's just part of life. But what I'm thinking is when you ask a lot of these college-age kids now that you realize you're narcissistic, and they're like, yeah, you have to be these days. It's competitive out there. I totally buy it. I believe it. I don't know, that's just how it is. And what was interesting that was just talked about just a few days ago was Harvard was talking about the increase of cheating that they're finding. So maybe all part of that goes to the increase in, well, I have to be competitive, I have to do well, I want to have that good career and stuff, and I'm not caring how I get there as much anymore. I'm willing to cheat on this exam or do whatever it takes to succeed at all costs.
I'm trying
So,
to figure
I don't know
out
if
the
that's good.
association between self-esteem and sense of entitlement. Like how I see it,
Yeah,
I think that I have a good degree of self-esteem, so I don't feel that I need a larger home or expensive car because I don't need that to prop me up.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
But your
self-esteem and sense of entitlement might be sort of different.
But your self-esteem at that point is based on your own worth, and it's probably more realistic value, that you know your weaknesses and you know your strengths. And so you're saying, hey, overall, I do well. Whereas people who are really narcissistic they're totally clueless as to how actually they look. There's people who, I didn't want to bring in a whole bunch of examples, but the gals who are 60 pounds overweight wearing bikinis on beaches, and you're kind of like, maybe you shouldn't do that. And they think they look great. They're hot. And I'm kind of wondering where that skewing happens. Yeah, Jim.
I think that maybe people are sensing a little bit of tension between the talk that you gave and the talk that you gave, Scott. But it seems to me that
but it was interesting though, it fed in.
But it seems to me that Scott is talking about how, or a lot of his talk focused on how you can build self-esteem through actually accomplishing things.
The
and
accomplishment,
through making
yes.
sure, rather than just. So your focus was on how to accomplish things, which will lead to better self-esteem, hopefully. But your focus was on how people are making sure that self-esteem happens first, and then hoping to succeed as a result. Maybe.
Yeah. Laura?
I think maybe part of the confusion lies from us equivocating in terms of self-esteem and narcissism, probably.
Yeah, and they're two different things,
And
yeah.
also narcissism and narcissistic personality disorders, which are also two
It's a
different things.
range, yes, yeah.
Because narcissism, or having some sense of self, and the fact that perhaps we are expressing more individuality, I'm not thinking is necessarily net negative. So the fact that we are more narcissistic or expressing our narcissism more in the last 20 years isn't, I'm not convinced that's necessarily a negative. There may be negative things that happen at the extremes of narcissism. But the fact that people are not lumping themselves into one common, sort of, if you want to go in the extreme on the other end, fascist, is probably a good thing. And where that balance is and whether that's a net benefit to society. I think when you say something like, well, look at all this technology's bad. Well, yeah, technologies can lead to bad outcomes, and technology can facilitate good outcomes, and it's how individuals use it. So I think perhaps just this, as mixing terms, might be part of the source of the confusion.
Could the issue come from more of the source of the self-esteem? I think we have a very interesting relationship between Scott's presentation and yours, whereas, Scott, you were saying how your self-esteem was validated by your own actions and by yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You were validating your self-esteem, where with all the other issues of growing up where you did good, you showed up, so you get what you want, it's very other people are validating your self-esteem, and so you go and you buy a big house and you buy a big car, so everyone else comes to you and goes, you have the biggest house, you have the biggest car, and everyone else is validating you instead of you validating you, and so you're having to keep going to other people.
Yes.
It's internal versus external validation.
Exactly. And it makes us all kind of, it raises the bar just that much more. All of a sudden, to have maintain a median lifestyle, you don't just have a small house now, you have everybody, the Joneses have this, so we kind of have to have that.
And it creates a very us versus them, or not even an us versus them, but it makes a I versus them mentality.
Yeah.
I'd just like to note too that it is really important to keep in mind that self-esteem is important for people, like a certain level of self-esteem, and it's very important for mental health as well. And it can be, like your example of bikinis on the beach. Like I would love to live in a society where everybody wanted to wear a bikini on the beach, or where everybody felt comfortable enough with themselves and with each other that they could do that, regardless, where everybody felt satisfied with the way that they look, or where everybody felt comfortable regardless of their body image. I think that the fact that we look at somebody wearing a bikini and say, oh, that person shouldn't be wearing a bikini, I think that's part of a problem too, because, you know, that person has every right to wear a bikini if they want, you know?
But they can also acknowledge the fact that, yeah, I'm a few pounds overweight.
But
But you know what, but I don't care, I'm accepting of myself, rather than, no, there's nothing wrong with me, I look fine. And that's where the narcissistic disconnect kind of happens.
Yeah, well, I don't think that I agree that that they shouldn't feel fine. Like if they feel fine with the way they look, then that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we're just talking about self-esteem and not potential health concerns, which is sort of a separate topic, you know, if they're happy with the way they look, then that's great.
Perhaps a better example would be somebody who's trying to jam their size 9 foot into a size 6 and claiming, no, it fits.
Oh, right.
I swear this fits.
Yeah,
and when
yeah.
it clearly,
It doesn't,
they
it
can't
doesn't.
walk, they can't do anything,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
aren't
yeah.
aware of that.
Sometimes I think to sort of continue Jem's analogy, I mean, it's good to have that people can accept themselves, but there's also sort of a downside, it seems to be, to that, to say, well, you know, to the you're okay, I'm okay thing, to someone who is, you know, 60 pounds overweight, I mean, however comfortable they feel in a bikini is one thing, but if they say, oh no, I'm fine, then they may, you know, the flip side of that coin, be sort of blinding themselves to sort of the health risks of carrying around that extra 60 pounds, and perhaps they might want to be healthier, but to say, well, you're okay the way you are.
Sure,
But when when my kids were younger and going to elementary school, they used to get their report cards, and it would be their grades like A, B, C, D, F. Those grades are all gone now. Now it's what is it? M for meeting expectations,
Okay.
or D for developing the expectation.
Yeah.
So I went to, you know, I go with my boys to parent-teacher day, and I said, this doesn't tell me anything.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know, if he gets an M, he's meeting expectations. Is he a Rhodes Scholar, or is he just meeting the expectation, barely meeting the expectation? Or for developing the expectation, is he actually getting there? Or is he dumb as a rock? And he's not getting this information at all. So to make you feel okay with everything is maybe blinding you to where you might actually need help with
And want to improve. If is meets expectations just the highest that they can get?
Yes.
So then what difference does it possibly make if I study for 5 hours or I don't study at all? As long as I meet and I get a passing grade, yeah, why would I want to do more?
By homogenizing everybody, it takes away that incentive to improve yourself.
Exactly, by accomplishment, and that's going to increase your self-esteem much more. To say, hey, I worked hard and I saw my grade increase. Yeah, I agree, totally, yeah.
2 points.
Yep.
To go back to the bikini topic, I think I think it's a good topic for representation of it, because I think we need to ask ourselves, why is a bikini the pinnacle of expressing yourself? Why is the big house, the big car, why are those all seen as having value, instead of the outward, just some sort of other outward appearance of feeling confident or feeling good about yourself? Why does it specifically have to be to feel good about myself, I need to be able to wear a bikini? And then to go to the grade statement, isn't that just breeding satisfaction instead of development? If we just go, they're meeting the expectation. What's the expectation? Is the expectation getting a 70%? Shouldn't the expectation be getting 100? So shouldn't everybody then, thus, in theory, need development, but some people are closer to it than others? And doesn't that still not convey any sort of actual understanding?
I completed university just before they introduced, at the U of M, they introduced University 101, which was kind of the introduction to university, because seriously, there were children or young people coming out of grade 12 going to university who couldn't put together a coherent paragraph or you know, have thought behind it. So yeah, it's a concern that these kids are getting pushed through and graduating, but do they really know, you know, anything about that? And I guess that's the last question. Thank you. Thanks very much.